So the Democrats found another thing to blame President Trump. This time it's about the children with cancer that apparently Trump administration is deporting them. U.S. citizens with cancer. So did he really deport them? So Nate the lawyer is going to be walking through with that. I'm going to link the description, or I'm going to put the link in the description so you can watch them.
Deportations are drawing controversy once again. This time, 3 children, all U.S. citizens, have been forcibly removed from the U.S. with their migrant mothers and sent to Honduras.
So now they are deporting American citizen toddlers with cancer. I don't know which of those 3 things is the most horrific.
So that's the premise, right? That's the Democrats' argument that Trump is now deporting kids with cancer. So you mean to tell me you're not going to look into that why? Or is that even real? A lot of people just jumping into conclusion. They're saying, oh my goodness, we're all going to be next. Everyone's going to be deported. Brown people is going to be deported. Here's Marco Rubio. I mean, he's now white.
Headline. That's a misleading headline.
It is.
Okay. 3 U.S. citizens, ages 4, 7, and 2, were not deported. Their mothers, who are legally in this country, were deported. The children went with their mothers.
Exactly.
If those children are U.S. citizens, they can come back into the United States if there's their father or someone here who wants to assume them. But ultimately, who was deported was their mothers who were here illegally. The children just went with their mothers. But it wasn't like, you guys make it sound like ICE agents kicked down the door and grabbed the 2-year-old and threw him on an airplane. That's misleading. Yeah. That's just not true.
So let's look at the headlines about these 3 U.S. citizens allegedly deported to some other country.
Yeah, so that's, if you're a Republican, if you voted for Trump, or if you even have a common sense, that the Democrats always have something in their sleeves. They're saying always.
Now, here's a message from our sponsor, Hillsdale College. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. blueprint. Now, go to Hillsdale. To the extent where doing this video, I had to do deep research into this topic because the amount of misinformation is incredible. Yeah. First, let me make that clear. No U.S. citizens were deported.
All right.
And I know it's sexy to sound that, hey, the Trump administration deported 3 children who happen to be U.S. citizens. And I know if you're looking at headlines across the news media, they're going to say the U.S. citizens were deported. That is absolutely not the case. So first, let's start with Jenny. Jenny.
The thing is, the Democrats and all the Trump haters and all, they're going to believe whatever they see. If it's against Trump, they're like, oh my goodness. Yeah, he's deporting a citizen. You can't deport a citizen. I became a citizen. I'm a naturalized citizen, American, right? So I cannot be deported. If I was like a green card holder and I've committed a crime that's subject to deportation, I'm not get deported. But citizen, especially if you're born a citizen, you go to jail here.
She is an undocumented immigrant. She came here illegally and she is from Honduras. Now, she was allowed to stay in the country under ICE's Intensive Supervision Appearance Program, known as ISAP. Now, Jenny came here with a young child who is not a U.S. citizen and is also here illegally. And while she was here in the United States, she had a second child who is a U.S. citizen because they were born here in the U.S.
Yeah, there's a great thing. I don't know. I mean, what it is. If they're a U.S. citizen, they're a U.S. citizen. But I think you look at the constitutions. I think that both or one of the parent have to be a citizen or in the process of being citizens.
Now, Jenny was always scheduled to be deported, and on April 22nd, 2025, during her ICE check-in, the administration decided to deport Jenny back to Honduras. So Jenny and her children were taken into custody, one also being an illegal immigrant and the other being a U.S. citizen. So the government placed the family in a hotel and scheduled them for removal. Now remember, Jenny is the legal guardian of both of her children, the one who's not a U.S. citizen and the one who is a U.S. citizen. So she legally has custody over those two children. And if she's being deported, she can make the decision to take the children with her or not. Now, even though Jenny and her oldest daughter wouldn't be able to come back into the United States, Jenny's youngest daughter would be able to return to the United States because she is a U.S. citizen. Now, there was legal action taken that asked the court to block the removal of the 2-year-old because she was a U.S. citizen, and claiming that the government didn't have any authority to remove a 2-year-old U.S. citizen to some other country. But as the legal guardian of the 2-year-old U.S. citizen, Jenny signed a statement in writing that said she wished to take her U.S. citizen daughter with her to Honduras. So with the child's legal guardian going to Honduras and saying they want to keep their child with them, the Trump administration facilitated that by allowing the U.S. citizen to travel with her mother and sister to Honduras. Now, I also should note that Jenny,
right there,
at the time of her deportation, was pregnant with another child at the time. And if that child was born here in the United States, that child too would have become a U.S. citizen. Now, while the plane was in the air, U.S. Judge Terry A. Doughty from the Western District of Louisiana was preparing to act on a habeas petition for the two children. Now, the judge wanted to speak with Jenny because he wanted to make sure that Jenny actually consented to taking her children with her to Honduras, because let's not forget, she is the children's mother and she has legal custody of those children. Now, while the judge was trying to reach Jenny, the plane had landed in Honduras, making the whole issue moot. Now, in a second incident, another mother who's also pregnant was scheduled to be removed from the United States. She had 2 children while here in the country illegally and was pregnant with a third at the time of her removal. Now, on April 24th, 2025, she too went to an ICE check-in and was detained with her 2 U.S.-born children, a 7-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl who notably was suffering cancer at the time. Now, the same process occurred where they asked this mother, did you want to keep your children with you because we're sending you to Honduras? She says yes, and they put her on a flight and sent her to Honduras with her 2 American children, who notably can come back into the country. So just to be clear, in both cases, both mothers are alleged to have said they want to keep their families together, they don't want their families to be separated, and they wanted to take their children back to their country of origin. Now, this would be the same if a mother wanted to take her child on a vacation to a separate country. She can do that because she has legal custody of her children.
Exactly.
And this is the same thing that essentially is occurring here. So just a quick recap. Both mothers are scheduled for deportation. They're both pregnant. The government says, hey, we're deporting you back to Honduras. They ask, do you want your kids to come with you? They say yes. Yeah. We're legal guardians. We have custody of those children and we want them to come with us. They send them back to Honduras. Now, those children who happen to be American citizens are welcome to come back at any time, but their mother wanted to keep their families together. So now here is the Trump administration explaining what happened.
These kids were not deported. Their parent was deported, and they happened to be U.S. citizens living in the United States. And so that parent elected to take those children with her on her deportation flight to Honduras or wherever I think it's Honduras. But they were not deported. As the Secretary of State said in the clip you played earlier, those are U.S. citizens. If they want to come back to the United States to live when they're older or when their mother allows it, that's fine. The mother allowed them to be with her as she was removed from the country. Yeah, it's unfortunate that little kids who have parents that make different choices in their lives have to suffer.
Exactly.
Just like if I went out and if I had little kids and I went out and did something terrible and the sheriff took me into custody, my kids are going to be alone. In this case, this lady elected to bring them with her to Honduras.
On the headline, that's a misleading headline.
It is.
Okay? 3 U.S. citizens, ages 4, 7, and 2, were not deported. Their mothers, who are legally in this country, were deported. The children went with their mothers. If those children are U.S. citizens, they can come back into the United States if there's their father or someone here who wants to assume them. But ultimately, who was deported was their mothers who were here illegally. The children just went with their mothers. But it wasn't like you guys make it sound like ICE agents kicked down the door and grabbed the 2-year-old and threw him on an airplane. That's misleading. That's just not true.
Just to be clear, because I do want to get to the overhaul at the State Department, is it the U.S. policy to deport children, even U.S. citizens, with their families, and I hear what you're saying, without due process? Just to be very clear there.
Well, No.
And I hear what you're saying without due process. Just to be very clear there.
Again, she repeated herself like it's like they're like United States is deporting children. A United States citizen with their mothers. You know how she used that word? I don't know if Ruby got him though.
Well, no. Again, if someone's in this country unlawfully, illegally, that person gets deported. If that person is with a 2-year-old child or has a 2-year-old child and says, I want to take my child with me, well, then you have two choices. You can say, yes, of course you can take your child, whether they're a citizen or not, because it's your child.
Yeah.
Or you can say, yes, you can go, but your child must stay behind. And then your headlines would read, U.S. holding hostage 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 7-year-old while mother deported. So the parents make that choice.
Exactly.
I imagine those 3 U.S. citizen children have fathers here in the United States. Yeah. They can stay with their father. That's up to their family to decide where the children go. Children go with their parents.
So now that's the Trump administration explaining what happened in this particular case. Now, here is the other side, and they're not going to focus in on the facts. They're really going to go in on pulling the heartstrings. Check it out.
So now they are deporting American citizen toddlers with cancer. I don't know which of those three things is the most horrific. And I'm not kidding. There were reports that the Trump administration has now deported at least 3 children ages 2, 4, and 7 who are U.S. citizens, and at least one of whom was receiving cancer treatment. So by now you know they're trying to rendition immigrants off to a foreign gulag in El Salvador without a hearing or a trial. But it looks like they are now trying to send American citizens away next. And I have to admit, before I looked into it, I didn't know what, if anything, could prevent that.
Well, obviously, you can't exile U.S. citizens to another country. If he didn't know that before this video, then I'm sorry, bro. You need to do more research. It's an obvious thing. You can't just send U.S. citizens.
Is that guy a lawyer or something like that? I mean, he's dressed up pretty nice, right? He's dressed up pretty nice. With that. Listen, oh my, it's just... man.
But as you see the opening of that video, it makes me think, are my videos that clickbaity? Because he just hit the heartstrings, right? Has a child hooked up to what looks...
Look at the picture that they use. A kid, a bald-headed kid, is just like dragging his IV fluid and getting deported with it. Oh my goodness. That is...
like an IV. Yeah. It's crazy. Bald head and all. They deported American citizens with cancer. But when you go into the details, it seems a lot more complicated than what he wants to make it seem. Now, here is Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, and he's going to explain the left wing's perspective on all this.
The Trump administration now puts out statements so absurd. They're in the ballpark of Baghdad Bob, the official Saddam Hussein spokesperson, who would talk about how there were no Americans in Iraq as American tanks were literally rolling behind him on camera, right? And maybe approaching the absurdity of IDF statements. IDF, oh yes, 12 children were killed today in Gaza. No, they were all 87-year-old Hamas leaders. Okay, whatever, man. So now, yes, we have a handwritten note from one of the moms.
What is this? What is this guy talking? He's comparing that to like IDF. I mean, to what happened in Baghdad. Bob was just talking about back in the day when. Oh yeah, okay, all right, Cenk.
In Spanish, maybe. Maybe we don't. The other mom we don't have anything on. But trust us, she wanted to take her 4-year-old who has cancer that has metastasized to Honduras instead of continuing to get treatment in America. No, we don't trust you. And that's not what the family says. The family's saying, please bring them back. They didn't even take the medication with them because they didn't know they were gonna get hijacked and kidnapped. They were US citizens. We didn't know that a bunch of thugs were gonna come and take them away without their cancer medication.
ICE, you mean ICE agent?
So, yeah, look, man, there's no end to the excuses for people who are in favor of this stuff. So, but guys, the second point is more important. The second point is about due process.
Oh boy.
So I know some on the right will say, hey,
the due process. So they break into the country across the border without due process, but on the way out, you want them to have due process. You're a moron, Jack. You're an idiot.
I believe Marco Rubio. Good luck with that. I believe Donald Trump. Good luck with that.
Yeah,
and Holman and all those.
No, you don't. Sometimes you play like that you understand things, how the left, how the right works, but you have no clue. You have no clue.
The moms are undocumented, and there is a court order. And if she wanted to take the kids, I understand your point on that.
Well,
but you understand what U.S. District Judge Dowdy is saying? We didn't go through any procedure here. You tell me, the family's telling me that you deported these American citizens. You're saying no.
See, they keep hammering that thing, deporting American citizen. Is this? I know he has like mashed potatoes for brain, but did he just look? Sometimes I can't.
They left voluntarily, but I never had a hearing. They never had a hearing, so I have no idea who's telling the truth. That's why we do hearings. That's why we have courts.
So the due process argument is really just saying, well, we want a judge to make sure that her signed statement where she said, I want to keep my kids with me, was actually her saying it, not under duress. And that's essentially their due process argument for both parents, because both parents allegedly said, yes, I want to keep my kids with me, send us back. Now, in both cases, I want to make it very, very, very clear. These kids can come back to the United States today. So I would ask Jake, well, why aren't they back in the United States right now? That kid suffering from cancer, getting those kids, they can be back in the United States right now, getting their cancer treatments, taking their medication.
Exactly.
Why didn't that happen? That's because it's better for the people who are against this immigration policy to keep them in Honduras and say, hey, look, they've been deported. Look how bad things are. When all judges, everyone on the planet knows that those kids can be on a plane right now back to the United States just like nothing ever happened. That's the truth. But again, whenever you talk about politics, it gets very muddy and the facts don't matter. It doesn't give a damn. And I think right now, these kids are great for the propaganda, right? Keep them in Honduras and they can yell and scream and say how wrong this is. They're exiled, they're deported, when they can solve the problem immediately by just bringing them back. Simple, right? The parents can bring them back. Cenk, he has enough money, legal eagle. He could go down there and pick the kids up and bring them back today, but they don't want to do that. It's better to let them suffer, to be martyrs for the cause, than to actually fix.
Cenky boy. All right, guys. I think that's it. Thank you for hanging out. Let me know what you think, and keep it here. Same channel. Later.